Japan's opening U20 match is against Nigeria, and this is one of the craziest matches yet, so let's waste no more time and dive into it. We then get right into it as we see Isagi tying his shoelaces before he takes a really deep breath and tells himself to focus on this one battle, calling himself a machine that lives for goals before correcting himself and saying that he is the tool that will make Japan the world's best. After that, we see the whole stadium starting to grow more and more excited as the announcer says that now the long-awaited first round of the U20 World Cup is here. These are the starting members of Japan, and we begin with the goalkeeper, who is none other than Gagamaru, who comes jumping into the pitch. The spectators in the crowd firstly comment on how cool those fireworks look, before someone else says that they are counting on him and calls him their guardian. Meanwhile, someone else just screams his name. Moving on to the three inner center backs, we firstly have the captain, Aiku. After him, we have the tall, long-haired, magnificent defender, Aryu. And lastly, we have the brains of the defense line, Nico. And I don't know why, but as he is walking onto the pitch, he just has so much aura like it's crazy. They are then about to move on to the two fullbacks, when we instead go over to Nagi, who is getting his ticket at the gate. He overhears someone else saying that the games are about to start. Nagi then walks alone in between the huge crowd and thinks that he is no longer part of Blue Lock, thinking that he betrayed the philosophy of living for his own goals. He lost and fell, and then because of all that he ended up here, thinking that because of that he can't try and make a return. We then get back to the game, where we see the glorious right-back Chigiri being announced as they call him the Godspeed Panther, and he also just has so much aura. We then have Hiyori on the side, who is kind of ruining it a bit, as he doesn't look as cold, but anyway, still hyped to have Hiyori in the game, as he will be playing as the left back, and they call him the cool-minded lefty artist. Then back to Nagi again, who we can see is beginning to sprint all that he can in between the people. He thinks that he will go out and seize something new. He runs to the security guard while saying that he lost, calling himself lame, gross, and pathetic, and that only after facing that version of himself can he finally start to understand who he really is. The guard sees him approaching super fast and tells him to slow down. However, he just runs right past the guard while saying that he is seriously searching for that heat. The guards are in shock and tell him to hold on again, and one of them screams that there is an intruder in the VIP floor. Nagi, however, is just in his own mind as he thinks that finally he is able to realize that maybe he wasn't actually fired up just by playing football itself. We then get back to the game for a brief moment as we get to the midfielders, and those are firstly the defensive midfielder, the unordinary assassin Karasu, and then the fiery, ever-changing all-rounder Ryo on the right midfielder position. Sadly, then we get interrupted by Nagi, and it's kind of annoying just going back and forth, but whatever. Anyway, he says that the reality is that no matter how much he tried to get fired up about being with Ryo, it just didn't work. So with that in mind, he thinks that he won't play soccer just to stay by Ryo's side anymore. After that, we see the left midfielder being announced, and it's none other than the yellow technician, Bachira, and I'm honestly so insanely happy about seeing him play. Then, moving on to the final two forwards, we have the strongest striker in Blue Lock, the beast Itoshi Rin, and then once again, back to Nagi, who thinks that it's not like he wants to go back to Blue Lock or to fight Isagi, and that the true heat is buried deep inside of him. We then see Nagi barging into the Japanese football union room, where Buratsuta just looks to be in shock seeing him. Nagi, on the other hand, looks out of breath as he says that the true identity of his ego is the scream of his heart. After that, the announcer is about to tell us the last striker, and I love how Isagi's first fan in the crowd is already ready for it, as he is screaming his heart out for Isagi, who then comes walking out, and he looks so insanely cool. Like, just look at his eyes. They are screaming determination. We then see Nagi's eyes beginning to flare up as he says that he wants to get that feeling back. The feeling of him being the center of the world, and pretty much being the god, and feeling the thrill of it all. And for that, he doesn't care if he lost everything else. Nagi then walks to Buratsuta and asks him if he still has that one spot open for him, as he no longer cares if he has to crush Blue Lock, and he looks insane and completely wild as he looks dead into Buratsuta's eyes and tells him that he wants to become the best in the world. And we then just see Buratsuta's smug face as he knows that his plan is just getting better and better. The announcer then says that alright, the U20 World Cup match is about to begin and that it's finally time for Japan versus Nigeria. We then see one of the Nigeria team's strikers, and he is called Onazi, and he tells Blue Lock to go all out with a smirk on his face. Isagi just activates his headphones, and he then locks in as he looks fired up to the max, and tells himself that it's time to get to the top. And just like that, the U20 World Cup kickoff has officially begun. We then see the four main Nigeria players playing when they were younger. Onazi has the ball and is styling on everyone while Bello tells him to go. Oboabona calls it unreal, and Kuso tells Onazi to finish it. And we then see Onazi doing just that as he most likely scores, and the text says that he became their beacon of hope. We then get to the announcer, who says that alright, once again, their commentators today are him. Teriasa Atsuto and Natsuki ask what's with this U20 World Cup, saying that the heat for the opening match is unbelievable and they are then about to go over the regulations for this tournament. Teriasa says that first the 64 participating countries are divided into 16 groups of 4 teams each, and they'll compete in a round-robin format, and the top 2 teams from each group will advance. From there, the top 32 teams move into the final tournament, including the third-place playoff. A total of 128 heated matches await, ushering in a new era of intense battles. Teriasa continues as he says that, and during the matches, the instant translator earphones that shined in the Neo Egoist League will be specially permitted on the field. After that, Natsuki interrupts as he screams that the match is about to start and says that he's getting really excited. Teriasa then says that now a new future of Japanese football will be paved and that the new chapter of Blue Lock, the U20 World Cup, begins. And we then see the kickoff with Rin and Isagi rushing forward. Meanwhile, Onazi passes the ball to Kuso. Kuso now obviously has the ball, but Rin and Isagi are right before him. However, that's no issue at all it seems, as Kuso is able to get through Isagi in no time. After that, Kuso just says that it's the shortest and fastest and calls it the best move as he passes the ball upwards right between both Ryo and Rin. It looks like the ball is headed to Bachira, but just then Bello comes by and tells Kuso that it's the spot. And somehow he takes the ball and is easily able to move around Bachira. Bachira is just impressed by this, and he compliments him. Bello, on the other hand, continues the attack and shoots the ball up on the field and tells them to quick counter. However, we see that at the bottom of the panel, we have Aryu, who tells Bello that the pass was sloppy, but then Onazi appears and says that it's completely fine because he's here. But Aryu isn't fazed, as he tells their captain to come on, and there we see the glorious Aiku appearing. Aiku smirks and tells Onazi that he has some serious springs on him, but Onazi just smiles and tells them that they are wide open, as he is able to see a hole in their defense, as he then shoots the ball while being in midair, which is so insanely sick. But what's even more sick is that Nico then comes and tanks the shot with his head. He then decides to just aura farm as he hits this insanely cool pose, as he tells Onazi that gaps must be filled immediately and calls it the basics of pest control. Onazi looks pretty shocked by this. However, he also looks amazed. After that we see a couple of feathers appearing, and I think both you and I know what that means, as we then see Karasu jumping up to meet with the ball and tells the newly reborn Blue Lock to go as he shoots the ball high up towards the field to start their counterattack. We see both of the commentators being ecstatic by this, as they say that here it comes, the counterattack, and that the ball goes to Hiyori. Hiyori traps it so cold and then calls it all reflex, which just sounds so cool, like he's got some new aura to him coming into the U20 World Cup. Because after that, he makes one of the most diabolical and disgusting crosses I have ever seen in this series. Just look at the curve on that pass. The commentator says that with only a few touches, the ball goes straight to the front line, and we then see Rin, who is the lucky individual who gets the ball, and we see him completely destroying and embarrassing not just one, but 2 of the Nigeria players, like none of them even knew what had happened to them. However, after that, the last of the 4 main Nigeria players comes, and it's Oboabona who tells Rin that he stopped him cold. But seriously, who did he think that he was, and that he could stop the beast of Blue Lock? Rin, who activates his predator eyes and tells Oboabona that he is lukewarm as the ball has already been fired. Oboabona just looks back, and he genuinely looks scared by that, as he is in amazement by the insane curve on Rin's shot. However, just as the ball is about to go into the goal, Onazi hits the Loki pose and blocks the shot, telling them that it's all good because he is here while having a smirk on himself. The goalkeeper is probably just thanking God that Onazi was there, because we can clearly see that he would have had no chance of saving that shot. The commentators are then in pure awe as they say that Onazi stopped it and asks just how he is able to be there. They continue and says that both teams exchange brilliant opening attacks and says that this is sure to be a fiercer battle between evenly matched rivals in the opening game. We also see the spectators just being in total awe by everything they are witnessing. But we then get to someone who has become a new version of himself, and it's of course Isagi who says nah, and that he has transcend. And while he is in his little puzzle realm, he says that he sees it, and that he sees a sure winning vision. And firstly, this panel just looks awesome, I just had to say it. We see Aiku being super locked in, as he says that it's just like their simulation. I'm guessing that he is referring to their training before and that they tried to predict and simulate how this match would go. Anyway, back to Aiku, who says that the Nigerian players are leveraging their physical abilities to make and receive outrageous passes and then try to finish by passing to their ace striker to score goals, saying that it's a single endpoint system. We also see Onazi for a quick second as he starts to run back, as he was at his own goal just recently and saved the goal. Aiku then screams second ball to the Blue Lock team. While he thinks that for them, they have an egotist system that can score from anywhere, he thinks that they are different types, but that they're both playing hyper-offense soccer. Aiku then smirks and says that it's going just like how they imagined it, calling it a clash of offense versus offense. After that, we see Obo Abona completely destroying Rin, as Rin had no shot at getting to the second ball, as Obo Abona was already in the sky and heading it away. He says that he made it and calls it a nice clear. After that, the ball falls to Kuso, and he also compliments Obo Abona, but calls him Obo, which I thought was pretty cool. I really just like when characters have their own nicknames. Anyway, Kuso then gets ready to turn around, as he says that it's time for a rapid counter, but just as he turns around to the Blue Locker's side, he spots Isagi being right in front of him. Kuso thinks that he responded so fast, and that he came to crush Kuso with a high press. Kuso then tells Isagi that he is good, but just then, another one enters the playing field, and it's Ryo, who comes by Isagi's side and tells him that it's time to hunt, and Isagi says, yeah. Ryo going in kind of throws Kuso a bit off guard. However, he manages to keep it nicely, as he puts his hands on both of their cores, which makes it harder for them to move how they want to. Kuso then thinks that both Ryo and Isagi moved in like ruthlessly efficient predators. Just when Kuso is in a rather tricky situation, Onazi comes behind him and screams his name, telling Kuso that he is here. Kuso looks at him and manages to get off a really nice looking backheel pass to Onazi and tells him that it was a great backup. But just then, Karasu comes by and steals the ball, telling them that they are so ordinary and that they are playing too obviously, and calls them dumbasses as he smirks. Onazi is a bit shocked by this before he just says oopsie, and I like how the main star of their team is just goofy in these types of situations, while on the other hand, Kuso is the more serious one, as he immediately says that their coordination was suddenly rendered ineffective and says that they saw through them in just the span of 2 minutes as well. Kuso continues as he says that Blue Lock has already started to adapt to them. Karasu, who now has the ball, is beginning to run towards their box, and the Blue Lockers have a ton of passing options, as we see Hiyori, Ryo, and Isagi all being possible players to get the pass. However, Hiyori is in the most dangerous position of them all, so one of the Nigerian players tells the others to cover him and to look out for another cross. Karasu just smirks, and he says sorry, before telling them that he is a real bully, and he then manages to get off a pass to his right, before the defender manages to get it off him. And on the right, we find the clear number 1 and future superstar of Blue Lock Chijiri, who looks super fired up and says that it's time to charge up the line. The defender from before just looks at this in shock and is amazed that they went with the other side. Another defender then comes by and tries to stop Chigiri, but it's no use at all, as Chigiri flashes past him and gets past him with no effort at all. Kuso looks at this, however, and outside of being impressed by the Pink Panther, he says that this time, rather than charge up the middle, they are racing up the side, and he screams out for his team to watch out for an incoming cross. However, Chigiri wouldn't let himself be stopped, as he tells them that they were too slow, and he makes a no-diesel cross, which I have no idea what it means, but whatever, it looks super cool, so we will go with it. Anyway, Kuso is ahead of Rin, and it looks like the cross is heading to Rin, so Kuso decides to try and stay close to him, but he quickly realizes the fatal flaw he has made, as the cross wasn't going to Rin, but instead to Isagi, who looks super locked in with his Metavision eyes out, as he says that it's his. However, at the bottom we see a white shoe, meaning that it's one of the Nigerian players, and they simply says nope. Now honestly, let's be honest, it's probably Onazi who will come to ruin the fun, and it turned out to be spot on, as we see Onazi going super close to Isagi. Onazi tells Isagi that he is already aware of the fact that his direct shot is bad news. Onazi then gets a huge smile on his face, and is about to say his annoying catchphrase, but that's when Isagi actually finishes his sentence for him. Isagi has his Metavision out and ready, and asks Onazi if he is going on about that again, and calls him a one-trick pony. Onazi is just super caught off guard by this, and he's like, what? But we then get into Isagi's puzzle realm, which always just looks so insanely sick. But that's far from all, as the ball actually goes down, and Isagi right off the bat makes a pass, to who we have no idea yet, as Isagi's puzzle pieces starts to go wild, as he tells Onazi that his best weapon is his ability to appear anywhere, to help with offense or defense, using his unlimited mobility, trapping, shooting, jumping. He has all high basic specs, which lets him run freely all over the field, and that keeps the Nigerian team invigorated, telling him that to simply boil it down, he tells him that if they won't let him touch the ball, then his team is dead in the water. We then see that the ball came to his partner in crime and the devious monster of Blue Lock Bachira, who, I don't even know what that man is saying, but he at least has a big grin on himself. Onazi then just looks like a mix of confused and shocked. Meanwhile, we have Kuzo over here acting like the Nigerian team's Karasu, as he's closely analyzing the plays and says that he understands, as Bachira runs on the field and embarrasses some of the Nigerian team players. Kuzo says that it's not as if all of Blue Lock has adapted to them, but rather every switch between offense and defense to keep the ball away from Onazi. It all starts with the boy Isagi. Kuzo thinks that he can read a situation and instantly formulate plans, and the ones who quickly fill in the missing pieces are the two brainiacs in the midfield. And Kuzo is of course talking about Ryo and Karasu, but then it all takes a wild turn, as at the same time, both Rin and Isagi locks in at the same time, which firstly catches both Onazi and Kuzo completely off guard, but they also starts to run with full speed towards the goal, and Kuzo is very aware of that. But to add on the fire, Bachira starts to get into a passing stance. Kuzo still can't keep his eyes off it, and he says that the twin aces are on the move, and he tries his best to figure out their next plan, and which one of them it is that Bachira will pass to. But Bachira then gets his tongue out and says that the number ones really thought that Bachira would pass, as he instead goes completely mental. And I'm sorry, but be ready for a ton of glazing, as this is insane. But we see Bachira firstly like shadow stepping behind a random defender, but then as he has gotten to the two aces, Onazi and Kuzo, he firstly nutmegs Onazi like it's kindergarten football before he gets in between Isagi and Rin, and then with the ball he makes a back heel back to himself, and he runs right ahead of them, leaving them no choice but to just look at him, as he's taking all of the cred and the glory. But seriously though, how crazy isn't this playoff Bachira? Like even the analytical Kuzo is completely left in awe as he says that at the last minute he forced his way through with an ad-lib. After that, we see Oboabona trying his best to get in front of Bachira. But seriously, come on, Oboabona has kind of done nothing this match so far, so of course he wouldn't have a chance of stopping the wild monster Bachira, who it looks like shoots the ball under Oboabona, which creates his second nutmeg, which adds on to the craziness. Anyway, while the ball is heading towards the goal, we see the goalkeeper actually jumping towards it. Meanwhile, Kuzo calls it a soccer that fuses a strategic coordination of intellects with a totally egotistical finish, and he now knows that this is the reborn Blue Lock with Isagi at its core. After that, we see the ball going straight towards the top corner like it really smashed into there. But after that, we see Isagi with a huge smile as he says that it's not bad and calls Bachira monster. Meanwhile, Bachira also has a smile as he says that he is going to scatter his ego all over this field, which honestly just keep that to yourself. We see the commentators screaming goal over and over again, followed up by them screaming Bachira again and again. After that, they finally start speaking sentences as they say that breaking past two aces to smash in a preemptive goal, it's Japan's young king dribbler, Bachira. After that, we see his goal celebration, and to be honest, it might be one of the most unique ones. However, I can't stop but think that it's still a bit underwhelming. Anyway, Bachira lands from his backflip, and we then see someone calling him Bachira Sensei, and we then get to 44 days earlier, where he is at Hanekamu Private Elementary School, and all of the kids ask him to please teach them soccer. Bachira says alright, and that they should start by trying to lift the ball first, and then, when they hit it with the top of their foot, they can learn to dribble. Now, obviously Japan's king dribbler does it with ease, but the kids are struggling a bit. Bachira firstly laughs at them, but he then tells them to try to feel like they are playing and not to think too much and to just feel it, giving the exact instructions that Lavinho would undoubtedly give. However, even then, the kids are still unable to juggle, and they start to call it boring. Bachira tells them to hold on a sec as he starts using his brain and thinks that he thought that it would be easy, but he then thinks that what's obvious for him isn't obvious to others. After that, he drops the ball onto his foot and tells them to do the same on whatever foot they prefer. After that, they're going to hit it back up and then catch it with their hands, asking them if they believe that they can do it. After that, the kids actually start managing to do it, just like Bachira taught them. He goes around and looks at them and tells them that they are doing good, telling them that once they get the hang of it, they can then try kicking it twice before they catch it, and after that, they can even go for like 3 or maybe even 4 times. Bachira then thinks back to his letter from Ego and says that he gets it. He thinks that to teach someone, you need to explain your own sensations in words. Basically, to teach, you have to have self-awareness and learn what your essence is, and that lets you grasp what you are doing in terms of sensations, as well as what your own essential talent is. After that, a shadowy figure of Ego pops up, and Bachira thinks that Ego gave him this homework to help him discover the sense of wonder that's already inside of him, thinking that in that case, it's not passing, shooting, or trapping, but that the essence of his soccer talent is dribbling. After that, he takes a ball and tells them to try and steal it from him as he starts styling on them, and they tell him to wait up and low-key glaze him. Bachira just smiles and thinks that it's not like anybody taught him, but that the source of his fun is his dribbling ego and the goal to become number 1 in the U20, which honestly is a pretty rough road ahead to do. However, I fully believe that he can do it. We also have Onazi on the side who watches Bachira, and he looks amazed as he says that he rules. We then get to Kuso, who says that they caught them off guard and tells them to try again. Bello says that it's time to strike back, and Oboabona tells them to let's go. We then see the fiery eyes of Onazi, who tells them to put their trust in him, and just like that, the game was back on. Kuso has the ball, and Bachira tries to take it, but Kuso actually styles on him and gets around him. Even Bachira admitted that he's got some skills. Kuso doesn't respond, and thinks that as they move up the midfield with him as the axis, he has to keep his eyes on Isagi and that they will revise their game strategy to get the ball to Onazi without Isagi touching it. The ball then actually goes to Onazi, but just then Ryu appears, and he tells Onazi that he is in his way. Onazi just smirks and asks what's next. Ryu then thinks to himself that he studied a new secret art during the 14 days Ego gave him, and that it's one used by defenders in one-on-one showdowns, explaining that it's Judo's principle of spacing, telling us that by reading the tiny movements of an opponent's body and gaze, you can then sense their next action, and when combined with his soccer defensive techniques, he becomes an impassable embodiment of martial arts, which we clearly see here as Ryu was able to read what Onazi was going to do and was able to follow him. Onazi just says that he guesses that he won't get past him, and he passes the ball to Kuso and tells him to give him an idea. Kuso traps the ball and says, "Very well." However, that's when Nico comes by and steals away the ball and tells Kuso that it's not as well as he thought, and that he's obviously the one to crush, which means that Nico has read that Kuso is the brain of the team. Kuso then looks shocked as he asks what's up with Nico, as he can't push him back, saying that his core is tougher than it looks, and he asks how this tiny guy is so jacked. We then learn that in Nico's letter, Ego had told him that his brain was exceptional and that he should build up a body to match. Nico then looks super cold as he says that it was simple and that he just did a ton of lifting, and after that, he starts to run away with the ball. Kuso, who is following behind, thinks that their defensive line has evolved past their prior data and thinks that they are countering. Kuso then screams at his teammate not to let them pass to Isagi. Nico just coldly asks him if he doesn't mind leaving this path open as he sends a long pass towards Ryo. Ryo traps it, and this trap actually looks super cold, but he then complements the pass. Nico then does his signature hand gesture as he tells Ryo to go and calls him a chameleon. After that, Kuso looks like he has just lost his mind as he thinks that their attack isn't starting with Isagi, and he tells everyone to watch out as they could pass anywhere. After that, Ryo says, "Initiate copy," and tells it to come on. Either he calls it original egotist or he calls Bachira it, as we see Bachira being right by his side. Bachira has a smirk on his face as he asks Ryo if he has done copy pasting and tells him to let's go, and we then see their double Bachira formation with Ryo transforming into Bachira, and now both of them are heading towards the goal, and Kuso just looks at them wondering what it is that is going on. But beside him we have Ryo copying Bachira, and just imagine that. Two Bachira are coming towards you, it's basically game over. Anyway, Ryo firstly embarrasses one of their defenders, leaving him questioning everything, and after that, he sends away the ball to the real Bachira, who seems to have been badly influenced by Charles and Shidu, as this monster has also started saying emojis. Anyway, he starts doing some nasty scissors as two of the Nigerian defenders start closing in on him, but that's when he genuinely locks in and does a similar move that he did when he scored the goal. But this time, instead of using his back heel to pass to himself, he passes to Ryo, who's still copying Bachira, and he jumps towards the sky to trap it flawlessly. We then get to Kuso, who is analyzing this closely. He says that the original Bachira and his copy are making coordinated play combos. He then looks super shocked as he thinks that this tactic isn't in their data and that they can't adapt to this right away, and he calls it a free and technical charging up the center. Anyway, back to the main men, who we see continuing to trade passes, and Oboabona says that they have to foul them, and Bello agrees and says that they need to stop them. However, if two Bachiras wasn't bad enough, then both Rin and Isagi appear on their side, and tell them to pass it and to use one of them. And honestly, let's be honest, if we see Isagi, Rin, Bachira, and Ryo coming towards the goal, then it's just better to give up. And we get to Kuso, who I can imagine thinks the same things as he says, that now they have the chance to pass to an ace, thinking that they're fine-tuning their attacks to fit any situation and that they have too many options, explaining that blue lock is impossible to predict, and he is just left wondering what they will do next. But we then see the purpled hair goat who says copy and change, and we then see him turning into the goat, Chigiri. Kuso once again is left wondering what is happening, as he thinks that he isn't passing but instead creating a shot course. But anyway, let's look at how insane this panel is. Like Ryo says model Chigiri, and then his eyes says 44, like that's details at its finest. I might just be hyped because it's technically Chigiri, but yeah. Anyway, Ryo says 44 degrees Panther Sniper as he shoots away the ball, and both Bello and Obo Abona are there and could block his shot, but I'm guessing that they didn't feel like it as the ball goes past them, and it even curves around Kuso, who just says that blue lock is unreal as he looks closely at the ball, which slowly but surely goes right into the goal, leaving Kuso wondering how blue lock is this good. After that, we see Ryo, who clenches his fist super hard, and honestly this looks super sick, as this might be the first cool goal celebration Ryo has ever gotten. Anyway, his eyes look super intense and wild as he says that he will win by himself, which is just what he needed. We then see the commentators who say that it's a super goal by Ryo. We see the crowd being absolutely ecstatic as they continue and say that it looked just like the slice shot Chigiri debuted during the Neo Egoist League, and with that cutting middle shot from 44 degrees, Japan has jumped up to 2 goals while Nigeria has 0. The other commentator doesn't know what to say as he just laughs and asks what that crazy thing was. We then get to the Nigerian side where we see Obo Abona saying that they are good. Bello says that they are gonna lose, and Obo Abona then once again adds in by saying that this is the wall of the world. But just then, Onazi comes forward and tells them that it's fine, and that they made it this far by busting through walls like this. Kuso looks back to him and says his name. Meanwhile, Onazi holds up the ball and says that they are connected by soccer and that they are the world's strongest family. After that, we get to 12 years ago in Nigeria and in the Lagos orphanage. There we see Bello and Obo Abona playing football, while Onazi is sitting by himself. Kuso goes to him and asks him why he hasn't tried to make any friends since he came here. Onazi just looks annoyed towards him. Kuso then asks him if he would like to play soccer with them and that it's no fun to just be alone, but Onazi then looks away. After that, Kuso explains that his parents got sick and died as well, saying that it's why the guys here are like his family now and that they are all the same as Onazi. However, Onazi continues to ignore him, which makes him annoyed, so he throws the ball back towards him and tells him to keep living a lonely life and says that he is boring. But then suddenly, as Kuso was walking away, he suddenly gets a ball thrown at the back of his head, and it's obviously none other than Onazi, who screams that he isn't lonely while looking super sad. Kuso is super mad and says that somebody who's not lonely doesn't say it while looking like that. Onazi screams that he really is not, and he then dashes away from Kuso and he runs outside with the ball, even going as far as throwing Bello to the ground, who asks what's with him. Obo Abona just asks him if he is trying to pick a fight, but Onazi is locked in and he pulls out some really cool scissors and he then destroys both Bello and Obo Abona. Kuso looks at this and says that he is good. Onazi then looks like he is going to evolve as he then jumps on Obo Abona's face, which makes him bleed, but that doesn't really matter as he then scores the goal. After he has scored the goal, he looks back and he looks afraid. However, he sees all of them looking super happy as they are going towards him, and they ask him for his name before telling him that it's nice to meet him, which makes his eyes light up as he finally feels happy. And just like that, they become a family. After that, we get back into the game, where we see Onazi, who has put the ball down and tells them to trust him and that it's fine as he is here. They all look pumped up, but that's when someone tells him that it's not fine. And that person is none other than the GOAT Isagi, who looks super fired up as he says that it isn't fine for them, as right now in front of them, he is here. Basically just taking Onazi's slogan and making it 10 times cooler. Onazi just looks at him a bit annoyed, as he has just been robbed of the only thing he says. We start by seeing the commentators screaming that with 2 back-to-back goals, the young Japanese team is in the lead. With just 10 minutes left in the first half, can Nigeria make a counterattack? Or will Japan pull further ahead? Time to battle it out for the last 10 minutes of the first half. And we then see the match starting back up, with Onazi passing the ball to his trusty right hand, Kuso. Kuso gets the ball and thinks that after this it's quite clear to him. He looks serious as he says that without a doubt, Blue Lock is the strongest team that they have faced, and the source of that strength lies in the 3 guys along the field's center line, Isagi, Karasu, and last but not least Aiku. He explains that these three have high soccer IQ and take a broader view of the game as they calmly use their intellects and logic to analyze their tactics. Then Inotate switches between offense and defense to control the structure of the match. On top of that unshakable foundation are their two spears of unfettered imagination and explosive speed, referring to Chigiri and Bachira. After that, they have the unpredictable destructive genius, who of course is Rin. After that, he goes over to the imitative artisan and the cool-headed left-footed passer, who obviously is Hiyori and Ryo. And lastly, at the back line, are two contrasting elite defender who couldn't be more unlike each other. And yeah, those are Nico and Aryu. However, he says that the one holding together this hodgepodge of circus freaks is undeniably Isagi. Kuso then passes the ball up on the field while saying that Isagi's skills are born from his brain and adaptability, saying that unless they can crush that ringleader, then Nigeria has no chance of winning. We then see that Onazi was the one who got the ball and traps it pretty coldly while he looks pretty intense. We then get back into another flashback where they are still kids, and Bello asks Onazi if he has played soccer before. However, Onazi says that this was his first time. Kuso then smirks and says that he must be a prodigy, and Oboabona in the back is also pretty stunned. However, they ask themselves if they maybe could go pro if they had Onazi. However, we saw Bello telling them to dream bigger and that they might even be able to win the World Cup. Oboabona then adds in that then maybe they can turn this life around and get rich. Kuso says that they obviously can, and that after that, they can buy anything and go anywhere. Oboabona says, like tasty food, and Bello just screams from the side that they can even buy a huge house. Onazi, however, just smiles and tells them that it's not that simple and that going pro is crazy hard. Kuso just looks unbothered and says that it's okay, as they got him, and Oboabona says the same thing, which leaves him a bit confused. We then get back to Kuso, who tells him that it's right and that it's fine as long as he is here. Kuso smiles and says that he feels like he can dream now and that he is sure that Onazi has been chosen by fate, calling him their shining hope. Onazi then says that he is here, which turns into the beginning of his annoying slogan. We then see some articles where Nigeria had beaten a team 6-0. Just a quick side note, but it says Nigeria's new generation. This doesn't mean that Onazi is a new generation World 11, which I saw some people saying. Anyway, we then see them when they won the U20 Africa Cup Championship. And they are all super ecstatic, as Onazi once again screams that he is here. After that, we get back into the game, where we see that there is just 1 minute left on the clock. Kuso is getting ready to pass the ball, as he says that it's time to drive it home. He explains that Onazi's weapon is his overwhelming momentum due to his extraordinary heart and lungs, and above all, his natural jumping and flexibility that makes mid-air plays possible. Kuso then passes the ball into the box, while having both Karasu and Aryu around him. Anyway, Kuso says that the greatest reason why Onazi is a striker is that his ability to shoot in mid-air effectively doubles his shooting area, which we see now as he is in the air and is getting ready to shoot away the ball while having both Aiku and Isagi around him. Isagi looks at him and Onazi, then tells him that he has surpassed him. After that, we get to Gagamaru, who looks super pumped up as he tells Onazi to just bring it on. After that, we get into a bit of a flashback to Igo's letter, where he had told Gagamaru that he is still just using his talent to fight, telling him to acquire a goalkeeper's body by undergoing some special batting training. After that, we see him in a field where he is getting baseballs launched towards him, which he is supposed to catch. Gagamaru says that baseballs are faster and smaller than soccer balls, so this will hone his reaction speed, which we see as he is able to catch one of the baseballs. After that, he thinks that he feels like his eyes and body are moving 1.5 times faster, and that once he grabs it, he needs to return to the middle. Also, a quick side note, it is Ryo's dad's business that is behind the ball launchers, which is kinda funny. Anyway, Gagamaru tells himself not to just use his head, but instead to learn it with his body. We then get back into the game where Kuso screams at Onazi to go and calls him their shining hope, as Onazi is able to shoot away the ball towards the goal, and he has a smirk on his face. Gagamaru even compliments the shot and admits that it is nice. He says that its trajectory is tilting upwards. However, his body is moving on its own. Gagamaru says that actually the ball's moving slower than the baseballs and that this puny shot can't slip past him. He then jumps and is actually able to block the shot as he says that he is Japan's guardian deity, which is, firstly, just so cool. Like, honestly, wow. But we also see Onazi, who is in shock by this. Meanwhile, Isagi smiles, and just then, the referee blows his whistle, which means that the first half is over. The crowd goes nuts, and Gagamaru says that he has got this on lock. And we then leave the first half with Blue Lock leading with 2 goals. We also see Kuzo, who looks just lost. He probably didn't expect Blue Lock to also have an insane goalkeeper on top of their insane other players. After that, we see the commentators screaming out their hearts as they say that Japan's Blue Lock really is this strong, continuing as they say that Nigeria's team was completely crushed both in the attack and defense, and with the 2-0 score, it also marks the end of the first half. After that, we get into the changing rooms and see Raichi screaming out of excitement. Nanase even jumps up into the air as he calls the save amazing. We also see the GOAT Corona, who compliments everyone on their great plays out there. We also see Fukaku in the back telling Gagamaru, "Good job," and he thanks him, which is really wholesome. Anyway, moving on to Aiku, who looks at both Ryu and Nico as he tells them that they are doing well, but that they're pushing up too far, telling them to pay closer attention to the defensive line in the second half. Nico says that he's got it, but that they can't hold back in ball disputes. And Ryu agrees, telling Aiku that he won't go easy in one-on-ones either. Moving over to Karasu, who says that honestly they could have scored another goal, he calls out to both Chigiri and Hiyori and asks them if they aren't focusing too much on crosses, telling them to try and take more shots on the goal. Chigiri just smirks and tells him to be silent and to just wait for the second half. Hiyori agrees and tells Karasu to take more shots himself. After that, he just leaves, and Chigiri goes over to Bachira to discuss his goal. However, we then see Anri, who looks at all of this going down. She calls them prideful and says that they haven't even set their second half strategy yet. She smiles and thinks that these boys are growing at an insane pace and that they have to clear the group stage no matter what, as she is determined to win. Suddenly, we get to Isagi, who comes by and says that there's no point in winning if they play like this. He looks serious and says that if they keep doing the same old thing, then they won't grow at all, explaining that it's why they are going to try something new in the second half. Karasu is a bit confused, but he is on board and asks him what he has in mind, and Bachira is also curious about that. Isagi tells them that he tried this in practice and that they will play a false 9, pushing in with the second and third lines, saying that if this works, then they will have more options on the attack. Aiku tells him that it sounds very interesting, but asks about the risks, and if Isagi doesn't think that holding the score till the end also counts as experience. Isagi says that he is right, and that they should just do both. Try new things, but also make sure that they secure the win. Aiku scratches his head while saying that he is right, but just then, Nico comes and tells Isagi that it's easier said than done, and that trying out new ideas in attack means the defense has to adjust too. Isagi, with no hesitation at all, tells him that they will fix that as well, and that he will talk about it with Igo. Karasu just asks them if they can really just change everything all of a sudden, but then someone else says that he is in on it. It's none other than Rin, who is sitting down. He says that just winning isn't enough for him, and that he will crush them in a new way. He then starts to look wild as he says that. Besides, he hasn't even scored yet. And that it's time to stop pretending to be a nice guy. And I don't know what he thought with that line, but it wasn't cold at all. Isagi looks back towards him and says, "Alright." And Aiku also adds in by calling them the 2 egoistic stars. After that, we leave them for a quick moment and jump into the Nigerian locker room. In there, we see Bello looking lost while saying that they can't beat them. Oboabona says that if they keep this up, then they will lose. After that, some random ask their coach what they should do in the second half. After that, we see their coach, who is also called Gambali. He calls Blue Lock impressive and says that they can set up plays all over the field and still score goals. After that, he compliments Isagi as he calls him truly impressive. He then looks serious as he says that they haven't been able to play at all so far, and that Onazi hasn't been able to play. We then get to Onazi, who has his towel over his head, and says that this has never happened before, and calls it bad news. He then takes off the towel and says that this is a World Cup, and he then starts looking super pumped up as he says that Blue Lock is a beast. Everyone is confused, but Onazi says that in the second half, Isagi will be there. Kuso just looks at him and wonders if he has gone insane. However, Onazi then jumps up and asks the coach and everyone else why they think that Japan is so strong. Bello says that they are strong because they can attack in so many ways, and Oboabona adds on that all 11 of them are trying to score. It's kind of funny how he added Gagamaru into it. Onazi then says that he is right and that every single one of them lives for the goal. We then leave them and head once again back to Blue Lock, where Igo asks them about their thoughts on why people say that they want to win. Everyone looks confused at the start, but Bachira asks if it isn't because winning feels good. Ego then asks him why winning feels good, and Isagi then adds on by saying that it's because that way you can prove that you're superior to others. Shido then says that he is correct. Ego says that the instinct is carved into their genes, and by nature an individual must show superiority to survive. The stronger ones have a better chance of leaving descendants, saying that Blue Lock exists precisely to draw out that survival instinct and create the strongest individuals in the world. We then move back to Onazi, who says that he wants to beat Blue Lock and tells his team that they should try and play like they are playing. Oboabona asks if he means that each of them goes after the goal. Bello looks worried and tells Onazi that they can't score like he can. Onazi then screams that it doesn't matter and to just give it a try. He looks at their coach and asks him if that's alright, and he just laughs and says that if he is the one saying it, then let's take this challenge head on and crush them. Then we leave them and go back to Ego, who says that however, if all human beings were guided only by the instincts of, I want to win, or I want to prove my superiority, then conflicts and prejudice would multiply and wars would never end. In order to prevent that, humanity created laws and rules, trying to evolve toward a life where everyone is treated equally. But that led to people being able to live without the feeling of wanting to win. And that apathetic world is what humanity calls peace. He puts his glasses up and says that it's why he keeps appealing to this instinct of, I want to win, so that the true burning desire within them doesn't get swallowed by this apathetic world. And of course, that includes him as well as Blue Lock is a living laboratory, created to rip away those who got comfortable with peace, laying bare their instincts and desires. After that, we see the Nigerian team walking out super hyped up, and Blue Lock also walks onto the pitch. Ego then tells them that he will grant them a new formula and asks them if they know why soccer has such power to captivate people. However, we don't see a response to that as the kickoff begins and the match is back in full action. Alright, so starting off chapter 319, also called the fanaticism formula, we firstly see silhouettes of all of the masters with the text saying, do you know why soccer has this much power to entrance humanity? We then also see Ego, which makes it clear that this is his inner monologue. We then see the kickoff starting as Isagi passes the ball over to Rin. Ego's little speech then continues as he says that regardless of birth or wealth, with just a ball, anyone in the world can freely take the field. There's no denying that this is connected to this sport's massive popularity. Right here, we have to take a break from his speech and focus on what is actually happening on the field, as we see Rin firstly getting free from two no-names from the Nigeria team, and we also see both Bello and Kuso starting to get active and start to sprint as they are headed to Rin. Now back to Ego, who says that in its essence it's even more primate and the origin of all sports lies in hunting, as he says that we see that both Bello and Kuso were able to quickly go to Rin. However, they simply ended up being done over with ease by the goat Rin. After that, back to Ego. It really feels like we are just going back and forth, but what can we do? Anyway, he says that as recorded on the prehistoric paintings found in caves, people tested their combat skills in martial arts and competed to display the physical abilities needed for chasing prey, as well as throwing stones or spears. At their root, all sports originate in the act of acquiring prey. In other words, acquiring prey fills empty stomachs. Sports originate from the basic acts of creatures trying to live. That's also why people's hearts are so entranced by sports. We then leave the Yap Master for a while as we see Oboabona, who came in and stopped Rin in his tracks. This makes the crowd go nuts as Oboabona gets the ball, which feels like it's his first time in this whole match. But anyway, he tells his team to smash it in and announces that this is Nigeria's counterattack. The ball goes to Kuso, who has Bachira right by him, so he passes it forward to Bello, who traps it pretty coldly. He tells everyone to let's go and not to pass to Onazi. After that, he makes a really sick turn on Karasu, who wasn't even able to process what just happened. But Bello, on the other hand, is fired up as he says that he is getting a goal himself. However, you know what I said about Karasu earlier? Well, that was a lie, as he was closely following Bello and asked him if he was trying something new, and told him that it wasn't going to work as he tried to separate Bello from the ball, which did work, but in the last second, Bello managed to somehow pass to his side. He said that he couldn't do it and told his teammate to try instead. His teammate got the ball, and we learned that he is called Sadiq. Sadiq said, "Alright," and told Bello that he had done good work so far. We then get to the blue locker's side, as Rio screams that he is coming alone, and Chigiri tells him that he is on it. Sadiq, who thinks that he is a main character or something, says that they can also be egotistical as he rushes with the ball. Chigiri and Rio is looking at him closely, before Rio tells Chigiri to box him in, and both of them manages to end his dreams of ever being relevant by crushing him and making the ball fly high up. Right here, We also get back to Ego's message as he says that, and in the sport known as soccer, players form teams and exchange intentions, then chase down their prey and finish it off, saying that you could call it a variant of group hunting. He asks, what is the position of the striker, the one who fearlessly leads the charge and slips past the enemy's eyes to land the fatal strike against their massive prey? And that's why the creatures known as streakers are heroes we instinctually yearn for. Anyway, now back to the actual fun part as we see Onazi coming and snatching the ball in the last second, and he is heading for the goal. However, Isagi is right on his tail as he is going for him. But that's when Onazi makes a heel trap over him, and we then get this insane looking panel with Aiku, Aryu and Isagi all around him as he is heading into a shooting stance. Meanwhile, we also see Gagamaru, who has a whole mammoth behind him, which this just looks completely insane and should go down in Blue Lock history. Anyway, we then get back to Onazi, who right when he was about to send away the shot, both Aiku and Aryu arrives right in front of him and stops him from doing anything too dangerous. Onazi, he just smirks and says that it's not bad as he passes to his side. This play of his leaves both defenders completely in awe, as Aryu can't believe that the ace player would pass here, and even Aiku admitted that he didn't see that coming. Onazi, on the other hand, screams at Kuso, who is running with everything that he can towards the ball. Onazi smiles as he sees him, and Kuso starting getting ready to fire off the ball. His aura around him starts to build up as even his eyes begins to flare up, and before he shoots the ball, we hear Ego saying that, in other words, the world's greatest striker must be the world's greatest hunter, and right when he says that, Kuso fires off his shot towards Gagamaru. Or not exactly, as his shot gets blocked right from the start by none other than Rin, who came and stopped him. Kuso can't even believe it himself as he sounds super surprised. Meanwhile, Rin tells him that it was too tepid and calls him a cornrow nerd. Rin also looks completely immersed in the game as he tells Kuso that he doesn't have enough goal lust. We see the crowd being ecstatic over this incredible save by Rin, and the ball then flies all the way into the sky. However, you guessed it, as firstly we get back to Ego, who says that so the simple act of kicking a ball around lets humans feel the primal sense of creatures trying to live, and their instincts are utterly entranced, calling it soccer's fanaticism formula. With that, we see our boy Aiku rushing towards the ball and also activating his meta vision as he jumps towards the ball and manages to get to it before anyone else and heads it away to none other than the poster boy of Blue Lock, Isagi, who traps it, and with burning determination in his eyes, he looks back at Rin and tells him to test it. Rin gets right up from the ground, and he also starts to get fire in his eyes as he tells Isagi that he is on it. But those aren't the only ones who are locked in, as on top of them, we also see Ego, who places his palms together and tells his players to go on and hunt their dream of being the world's best and to prove that they are heroes. With that, we see Isagi's puzzle pieces starting to get active around him as he, alongside Rin by his side, rushes with all that they can against the goal. We start with seeing a flashback into the changing rooms before the second half began. In there, Isagi told everyone that they should change up their tactics in the second half and test out a new pattern. He looks serious as he says that when it comes time to counter, they won't build up with everyone like before, and that instead, it will center on Rin and himself passing back and forth, and they will tear right up the center, while everyone else is free to try for their own goals, calling it their variable no-top system. And as we get back into the match, we can clearly see that this new pattern has the Nigerian team panicking, as they can't believe what is going on, as they say that the double aces are building up, and they wonder if they are gonna counter by themselves. Also in this panel, we saw Kuso being useless like always. Anyway, as Isagi and Rin are crushing the Nigerian team all by themselves, we then get into 30 days ago to Rin's special training. Here we see some monk telling Rin to empty his mind and to visualize the void. Rin in his own head saying it over and over again, but as he tries to empty his head, two small figures of Sei and Isagi pops up in his head. Isagi looks happy as he says that he is number one. Meanwhile, Sei looks like usual and just calls Rin tepid. This makes Rin lose it as he starts getting angry. But just then, the monk puts Rin in his place as he smacks him with a stick, telling Rin not to think of any worthless impediments and to instead be calm, correct, and have control. He then stops screaming at Rin and tells him to release his fixations and that he must find his true essential mind. Rin looks back at him while looking pissed as he thinks that it's impossible. We then see two shadow silhouettes around him, still of Isagi and Sei. However, Rin says that if it wasn't for them, then he wouldn't be who he is now. He thinks back to his childhood and says that his true essential mind is wanting to destroy Isagi and Sei. But the ego he uncovered behind that impulse was that he wanted to score goals while destroying himself, and that anything that interferes with that is just an impediment. We then see Rin getting attacked by two players, but somehow he is still able to send the ball over to Bachira, who just had to show off with an insane trap, but he then starts to smirk and says that it's time for another point. We then also see Ego on the bench as he says that this is it, as he calls them his lumps of talent and then says that to humanity's instincts, soccer is a form of hunting and that strikers are the heroes who strike down their prey, and he ends it by calling it an absolute truth. Anyway, we then see Bachira, who looks ecstatic as he fires off a shot towards the goal. However, I can't believe it as Oboabona actually does something in this game as he is there to stop the ball with his head. Bachira obviously gets a bit annoyed by this block, but the ball then rolls over on the pitch, and Ego then continues his little speech by saying that the one with the most suitable abilities and mental fortitude can become the world's greatest striker, and that therefore they must test their egos to see if they reach the level of heroism. Anyway, now that he is done talking for a bit, we saw that the ball went to Hiyori, who right off the bat shoots towards the goal, but it sadly ends up getting blocked by the keeper, but fear not, as the ball rolls over to the future #1 striker of Blue Lock, Chigiri, who fires off a mighty shot towards the goal, which just had to get blocked by Onazi. After that, a no-name from the Nigerian team tells everyone that Blue Lock keeps coming, while Bello compliments Onazi's block. More no-names then start speaking as they say that if they don't get the ball, they aren't going to stop. However, after that, we finally move over to one of the GOATs, who is Rin, who thinks about his brother, his rival, and the title of becoming the world's best. He says that those labels assigned by someone else are just impediments. Just had to stop his speech to say that his pass here looks absolutely fire. Anyway, now back to Rin, who says that to purify his desire, he needs to remove the limiters on his urge to destroy, and that the state can't be a sudden rampage, as he needs to make it a default setting, and that he doesn't need his tongue hanging out to go into beast mode. Before going over to his beast mode, we see that Isagi passed the ball over to Bachira, who gets it easily and then starts to smile as he says that here comes the wild beast, which in this case is none other than Rin, who is rushing with full speed while looking almost possessed as he has his full rage aura out and even his eyes are starting to flare up. We also see Isagi by the side, who has his meta vision eyes out and is not going to go down without a fight. Moving on from him, we get over to Onazi, who looks to be in total awe as he says that Rin and Isagi were cooperating in the build-up, but now they are going off on their own. However, as he takes another look around the field, he sees that it's not just them, as all of them are trying for goals, and he questions who he is supposed to stop. We see Isagi and Rin looking extra fired up as Bachira gets into a passing position, as he says that he sees someone, and just like that, he fires off the ball towards the box, as Bello had no chance of stopping it. We see both Rin and Isagi having company by Onazi, as well as Oboabona, but still they are both rushing towards the spot of the incoming pass. The goalkeeper, Agbim, says that it's just as he thought and that it's the double aces that are breaking through. After that, we see Isagi fully locked in as he says that he already knew that Rin was coming. However, that's no use as the ball's trajectory is headed here and he's on track to reach it a moment before him, saying with full confidence that everything is going according to his plan. But we then get into Rin's head, who has firstly his predator eyes out in full action as he says Isagi's name, and that if he uses his logic to turn himself into a tool for victory, then he will give himself over to pleasure and sell his soul to adrenaline. With that, we see Rin crashing into Isagi's back, which makes Isagi's puzzle pieces scatter around like crazy as he is in total confusion, but Rin himself just slides on Isagi's back and is starting to get into a shooting stance, while he is getting ready to fire off an insane shot. We see a small panel of Ego saying that Rin has reached it. He has reached the will to live as a hero with no fear of death. With that said, we see Rin shooting away the ball, which bounces onto the ground before going straight into the back of the net, which makes the whole crowd starting to cheer as Rin has scored his first goal this match, but also given Japan a 3-goal lead, as both Isagi and Rin get back on the ground. We see Isagi looking slightly annoyed, but still very fired up as he calls Rin a freak and says hero or death, and asks if he is correct. Rin actually looks kind of wholesome as he just has his tongue out towards Isagi, and says that he has cleared his impediments and awoken his essence. We get right into it by seeing firstly the crowd going nuts, but also the commentators as they scream with everything that they can that this is a super goal. Also, a fun detail is that we see Isagi's and Bachira's parents celebrate, which was so wholesome. Anyway, the commentators continue as they say that Rin used Isagi's back, or rather, that he borrowed it. Like a well-oiled machine, those two fit perfectly. What a magnificent spin gear shot, and now with Rin's goal, Japan takes the 3-goal lead. After that, we see both Rin and Isagi down on the ground, with Rin still having his tongue out. After that, we see Isagi's face, who has a big smirk on, as he asks Rin if he was plotting that whole time for that play, and calls him a beast of destruction. Rin just coldly looks at him and tells Isagi that he was, and that while Isagi was lost in thought, calling Isagi king of logic, Rin saw Onazi coming to block Isagi. If Rin had let that happen, then Isagi would have scored with his 2-gun volley. However, that's when Rin's instinct kicked in, and he stole the ball before Isagi could move and shot it right away, leaving Isagi with no chance to counter. Rin continues as he explains that he decided to give in to his impulse and do whatever it takes to surpass Isagi. We then see Rin looking super furious as he says that when his brother joins this team, then he will be the striker who erases him from existence. Isagi, who is listening into his emo talk, just laughs and starts to walk away, while telling Rin that it's fine by him, and telling Rin to bring it on, and that the more creative Rin gets, the more pieces he can add to his puzzle. And he has a huge smile as he says that. After that, we see Bachira, who asks them what's up with them now, and asks if they are teaming up all of a sudden. Chigiri then adds to the conversation by saying that the next goal will be his. However, we then see Karasu saying that he is wrong, as the next goal will be his. After that, we get to the bench and mainly Henri and Ego. However, we do get a small Corona cameo on the bench, which is something. Anyway, Henri is ecstatic as they are in the lead and says that they are winning this. She smiles and says that even if this is just the first game, the boys are on fire. They're connecting perfectly out there. The goals keep coming, and they've even pulled off a brand new strategy. After that, Ego invites himself into the conversation and says that Rin's got the instincts and mindset of someone born to score, traits that align perfectly with what it means to be a hero, calling Rin a natural-born striker. However, he says that there's more than one way to be a hero. We then see small panels of Aryu, Nico, Hiyori, and Aiku, as Ego says that the real magic of Blue Lock is awakening in them the drive to become their own star. Henri looks back at him and says, "Yes, sir." After that, we see the clock, and we see that there are only 15 minutes left on the clock, and we see all of the Nigeria players looking defeated and totally out of breath. A no-name on the team says that scoring 3 goals now, there's no way that they can do that. Oboabona adds in by saying that Japan, they sure are strong, and Kuso is just too embarrassed to say anything at all. After that, Bello speaks up and asks them something. He asks everyone on the team if this match isn't kind of fun. Oboabona says that he guesses so, saying that it's the first time they have played like this, and that with everyone gunning for a goal at once, 2 other no-names then speak up and say that they are right, and that this new style of not relying on Onazi is pretty cool. Bello then looks pumped up, as he says that he knows that it's looking rough for them, but that they should at least try to score 1 goal, saying that he can feel that the team will change if they just score 1 goal. After Bello's speech, all of them get some sort of newfound motivation, as all of them scream and say that they will turn it around, while Kuso and Onazi just look at them in shock. But then, as they are all somewhat excited, Isagi comes going towards them and tells them to forget it. He looks super determined as he tells them that it won't make a difference. Bello looks at him in total awe as he has no clue what he is going on about. But Isagi's eyes then quickly change and look manic as he tells them that they are all just hyped up like they just walked out of a movie. All of them know that feeling when you watch a great movie, walk out pumped up, and say, "Man, I want to live like that." The truth is, you're just running on impulse, letting yourself get hooked on whatever feels good in the moment, but the next day, you will forget about it. That kind of instant ego doesn't change anyone's life, and he says it with a dark and serious tone. Kuso, who's still humbled by Isagi, keeps quiet. Meanwhile, Bello asks him what he just said, and we can see that Bello is visibly annoyed. Oboabona then also speaks up and tells Isagi that he doesn't even know them, so how could he say that? But just then, Isagi speaks up and tells them that this is the exact problem. This catches everyone's attention as Isagi goes deeper and explains that they have all said the team will change and that he doesn't even know them. However, by calling it a team problem, you're just dodging what's really going on right now. By throwing your mistakes onto everyone else, you're just hiding behind the group and stopping thinking for yourself. He puts his finger up and tells them that he isn't talking about their team, but instead about each one of them. He points to his head and tells them to use their brains and start thinking for once, asking them how they feel when they are going up against Blue Lock. Everyone is silent, but Onazi clenches his fist and finally speaks up as he says that it's frustrating and that he can't let it end like this. He looks super angry as he says that if he keeps playing the same way he always does, there's no way he will ever beat Isagi. Kuso looks at him in pure amazement and can only say his name, Isagi, then tells him that he is spot on. He then asks Onazi to tell him what it is that Onazi really wants, asking him if it is to make memories with his teammates, but Onazi right away screams no. Isagi asks him if it's to become Nigeria's hero. However, Onazi once again screams no, and screams that he wants to be the best striker in the world. Isagi then smirks as he hears that, and says that they are finally on the same page. After that, he throws the ball to Onazi and tells him to go on and to change his pitiful life and face Isagi, while also calling Onazi an egoist. Onazi catches the ball and also starts smirking as he asks Isagi where this ego of his, so massive and insatiable, comes from. Isagi's eyes then light up with a flare as he says that it's from the curiosity to discover who he is, and he then starts to walk away while having his whole puzzle pieces being scattered all around him. After that, his eye starts to begin to light up, and the text says that it is 44 days before the awakening of this ego. We see the crowd being absolutely ecstatic, and the commentator says that with only 15 minutes remaining in the first match of the U20 World Cup, the new U20 team, Blue Lock Japan, is holding a 3-0 lead. And now, if that wasn't crazy enough, as the game winds down, Blue Lock is swapping in two new players, who we see are firstly Corona, who jumps up and says Shark, and the other one is Raichi, who looks super pumped up as he screams out of excitement. Raichi then smirks and says, "Here comes Raichi the closer." Corona, on the other hand, just repeats that they are going to win and to end it. We also see that Chigiri and Hiyori were the two players who sadly got benched. However, they still look fired up as they look towards Raichi and Corona and tell them that it's up to the two of them now and that they need to show them their fangs. We then get over to the bowl cut Ego, who says that the experiment is over and that there are only 15 minutes left. He then looks intense as he tells Blue Lock to keep Nigeria down at 0. With that said, the match is also back on, and Raichi, Isagi, and Rin waste no time at all as they rush to the Nigerian team to try and take back the ball. But just as Onazi passes the ball over to Kuso, we get a small panel of Isagi, and we then get into a flashback to 44 days ago, and more importantly, to Isagi's ego transformation. We see his letter from Ego, him watching the movies and highlights provided by Ego, and the text says that with this special training Ego gave him, the more he learned about the world soccer, the more his values got revised and more expansive. Also, as a side note, I'm guessing that this is from the England game, and this player here just has to be Mohamed Salah, which is super cool that they included in the series. After Salah's goal, we can see Isagi looking super hyped up as he puts his fists together and looks super pumped up. His eyes then widen as he thinks that soccer is so fun and fascinating, thinking that he can't wait to get back and test out the new him. However, just then he overhears some kids to his right, who are also super ecstatic over the goal that just happened. One of them says that he will become a soccer player. Meanwhile, the other says that he will win the Ballon d'Or. And let's be honest, but this is so wholesome, as I bet that all of us thought just like them when we were younger. Anyway, they continue to argue over who it will be. And as Isagi looks at them, he gets a bit sentimental, and he starts to think about why he started playing soccer from the beginning. We then see a kid Isagi who is starting to cry. His tears just doesn't stop as he screams that he is scared. His mother comes by right away to ask him what's wrong and says that he is crying again. Suddenly, she spots a mosquito, which was the thing that scared Isagi, so she locks in and smashes it right away, telling Isagi that it's okay now. We then see his dad scratching his head as he says that Isagi is scared of everything, saying that he even gets startled and cries over raindrops, which is diabolical, but moving on as he asks what they should do with him. Suddenly, his eyes light up as he says that he has an idea. After that, he holds up some tickets and says that they should all go as a family. Isagi, who still has tears going down his face, asks his father where he plans to bring them. We then move to the day of the trip, where we see that they went to a soccer stadium to, well, I mean obviously, watch an intense game of football. Isagi's parents are both holding his hands while the crowd goes nuts watching the game. They then sit down, and his mother asks him if he is okay and says that he can just tell them if he gets scared. However, surprisingly, Isagi is just quiet, and his father says that he seems surprisingly calm. We then get to Isagi, who is intensely watching the game and the players fighting for the ball. He thinks that there are so many people and so much enthusiasm, saying that 2 teams of 11 are chasing a ball and scoring goals. After that, we see that one of the players actually manages to score a goal, and just in that moment, Isagi says that it felt like his brain had awakened, and he calls it awesome. We also see that his head is starting to kind of dissolve, like when his puzzle pieces start to get active. However, this time it looks more like bubbles. Anyway, Isagi continues to wonder what this feeling is. He later told his parents that he also wants to try that, and that he also wants to stand out there on the pitch, and his parents couldn't be happier to hear that. We then see the small Isagi trying to play with the ball, as he says that now that he thinks back, that might have been the simulation of his hunting instincts that Ego talked about. We then see him watching TV, and who looks like to be Noah. He says that anyhow soccer was fun, and he wanted to learn more about it to keep getting better and stronger each day. He wanted to be totally absorbed in it, and in himself, but sadly it didn't stay like that for very long. As the strong feeling he felt as a child grew fainter as he gradually grew older, he thinks back to the bum Tada, and not to mention his coach, and all of their bullshit, and thinks that feeling he felt it got buried and almost had vanished. He says that his heart was about to die. But that's also why, when he heard Ego's speech about throwing away one's common sense, and when he came to Blue Lock and met all these egotists, Isagi then finally realized that the excited feeling from back then, which he had almost lost, was actually a sort of curiosity in himself. After that we get back to the game where we see the Shark Teeth duo being able to counter Onazi right off the bat, once again proving how mid he is. Anyway, they get away with the ball, and Raichi screams out of happiness and says that it won't happen like he wants it to, and calls Onazi a luminous twerp. Corona also adds in, and says that it's their turn, and calls it a pincer strike. Onazi looks at them, super annoyed. However, Bello, who thinks that he is someone, suddenly starts rushing to the ball as he tries to be the hero, and says that it isn't over yet, as he will get it. But under him, we have a small panel of Isagi's eyes, which has now entered the infamous meta-vision state. Isagi also says that if he doesn't excite himself, then who's going to live his life for him? With that said, we see him looking pretty wild as he has his puzzle pieces all around him as he pushes away Bello and gets to the ball before him. He starts running with the ball and says that adapting to things, smashing his expectations into others, pleasure, frustration, and even despair, all of it. He wants to live on this battlefield to meet the new him. We then end this panel with this honestly and outright insane looking panel with Isagi looking totally demonic and manic, just like he used to do in the earlier panels of Blue Lock, and he asks them all to bring it on and to give him that soccer stimulation. But honestly, just look at him, with his smirk and his eyes beginning to turn into a dark shade, and not to mention the amount of puzzle pieces he has around him. He is really on fire right now. We see Isagi running with the ball with an insane force forward. The commentators start speaking up and say that Isagi has the ball and that it's time for Blue Lock Japan's counterattack. After that, we get a close-up panel of Onazi, who looks at Isagi, and he thinks back to when Isagi told him about the curiosity about himself, and this makes Onazi's brain starting to tick, as he also wonders if he can live just like Isagi. We then see Isagi being an absolute beast, as even with two defenders on him, he was still able to keep them away and get a pass off. The ball goes directly towards our little bee Bachira, who has just such a cute little wholesome smile as he gets the ball. But with that, we get back to Isagi, who honestly looks a bit mad at the Nigeria team as he asks them if this is really all that they've got. He speaks to all of them and says that if they want to be the world's best, then they have to surpass Blue Lock and also his own brain. We then get this outright insane panel with a bunch of puzzle pieces and the Nigeria players' faces on them. We then get all the way to Aiku, who is now standing right by Isagi. Aiku tells him to be careful with his taunts. Isagi is a bit confused by what he means. However, Aiku says that Ego told them to keep them at 0 and that their morale was about to be decimated. So why is Isagi pumping them up like that? Isagi coldly, without even a second of hesitation, tells Aiku that he can turn it all into data, explaining that if one of them awakens, then he can experience a new form of soccer. He then starts looking totally manic and demonic as he says that in turn, if he can adapt to and stop that egotist, then Blue Lock will also evolve even further. Right? Aiku's whole world pretty much stops as he hears that, as he looks genuinely scared for his life as he wonders just how greedy Isagi really is. But Isagi is far from stopping, as he says that even if they get a point, they will still win. They both look at the clock, and Isagi says that there are 5 minutes left, and he asks if they will awaken or if they will adapt. With that said, he starts running with full force right up on the field and tells Aiku that he is leaving the backline to him and calls him captain, which is a really nice little touch. As Aiku hears this, he looks extremely fired up as he wonders if Isagi is testing not only the Nigeria team, but also Aiku himself, and he says that he understands. We then get over to the Nigerian side where someone tells their team to cover the left side. We then see the GOAT again, Bachira, who is unnecessary flexing with his outstanding dribble skills. But anyway, as he gets the ball back to his back, he then uses his back heel to pass a lob pass over the Nigeria player and over to Rio, telling him to go for one more and calls him Riopon. Rio looks totally focused on the game, and as he is watching the ball closely, he compliments Bachira's lift pass. However, just then, the unthinkable happens, as I really can't believe as for the first time in this entire game, Oboabona actually does something. Yeah, I know, pretty unbelievable, right? However, he says that This is the third time they did that as he heads the ball, but Chira looks annoyed and says that Oboabona was able to see through them. I mean, yeah, doesn't sound so hard if this was their third time doing it. Anyway, back to Oboabona, who screams towards his team to get the second ball. But we then get a small panel of Karasu telling Kuso that he is too ordinary for that. But Kuso counters as he says that it's Karasu who is that, as he's able to dash right towards the ball and get to it first, which Karasu can't even process how that happened. Onazi sees this and screams towards him and compliments him. Kuso looks over at Onazi and looks genuinely shocked before thinking that Onazi, he was the one who gave them the hope to keep living, with their dream of winning the World Cup. Kuso starts to think back to their earlier years and says that being with Onazi was so fun and that it felt like a dream. However, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine as we get into a flashback to Kuso telling Onazi that the data says that they haven't been increasing their attack patterns lately. Kuso explains that they are winning, but their scoring power is gradually dropping, and that at this rate, there's a high probability that other countries will devise countermeasures and shut them out. With that in mind, Kuso suggests that if they stop making Onazi the lone finisher and instead brought in a second player to help out in the front, adding in that it's also what the coach suggested. Onazi, who is laying and chilling on the couch, just asks Kuso if that wouldn't mean that he would get less playtime, or Oboabona, or Bello. Kuso looks back at him and says that they have to fight to play, and that there's always a battle over the starting lineup in soccer, telling Onazi that it's time to accept that things can't stay that way forever. But before Kuso can even finish off that sentence, Onazi has already cut him off and says that there's no way. He gets up and goes over to Kuso and tells him that he doesn't want to play soccer if it's not with all of them. Kuso just says his name before Onazi explains that he was so lonely, but that they all saved him, and that he wants to repay them for becoming his family, saying that he wants to take them all to the World Cup and win together. With that said, he tells Kuso that they won't change their method as they don't need other players. Kuso once again can just say his name, while in his head, he thinks that hearing this makes him so happy that he could die. But he wonders if this choice isn't just gonna kill of Onazi's own possibilities. However, Onazi just has a bright smile on himself as he says that it's fine as he is here, which that one-liner is really starting to get to me. But with that, we get back into the game where we see Kuso running high up on the field. Bello calls out for him and tells them, "Let's do it," and Oboabona tells him to go all the way from the defense line. But Kuso is currently stuck in his own brain, as he says that in the end, he caved to Onazi's kindness and couldn't say it, and before he knew it, their dream had gone from winning the World Cup to being together. However, as he looks forward to the Blue Lock players, he says that they have been exposed by them, or rather, that Isagi has been the one to expose them. With that, we get a close-up panel of Isagi with his meta-vision eyes out, which just looks so sick. After that, we see Onazi, who screams with all that he can towards Kuso to pass him the ball. Kuso says that he is going to, and thinks that here at the hottest place in the world, you can't move forward unless you throw them away, explaining that Blue Lock brought to light the part of Onazi's ego that makes him fight for himself, and not all of them, telling Onazi in his brain to chase after that curiosity in himself. With that said, we see Kuso actually being a bit of a baller, as he is able to cut through both Ryo and Karasu with some insane dribbles. We then hear Raichi, who screams at everyone to stop him, and Karasu is just left wondering when he got so sharp. We then see Raichi, who absolute crashes into Kuso's body as he tries to get the ball back. But we then get another speech from Kuso who says that their family dream might end here, but even so, he wants to see when Onazi take on the world, and he calls it his own curiosity. With that said, however, we see him getting off a pretty impressive pass over Ryu, and the ball is going all the way to Onazi. With the ball getting closer to Onazi, Kuso calls him his shining hope and asks to let him see him reach the world with this shot. Onazi looks super focused, and Aiku as well, who is the one currently in front of Onazi, and who has the job to stop him to whatever the cost may be. Aiku, who has his metavision eyes out, and Reddy says that the new egotist is here, which I'm actually unsure if he is talking about Onazi or Kuso, as we see Kuso's eyes burning like crazy in the panel under, so I would assume that he is talking about Kuso, but let me know what you guys think. We see the ball, which was sent by Kuso in the previous chapter. It's coming closer and closer to Onazi right now, but even with that in mind, it won't be easy for him, as he has Aiku right ahead of him, who is going to hold him down. Aiku gets out his metavision and thinks that this will be a one-on-one at the goal box as he looks at the pass and sees that it's a spot-on cross pass. He even breaks his silence and says that it stings, but after that, we see him looking super fired up as he has an aura all around him as he thinks that if he stops Onazi here, then this match will end peacefully. We then see Onazi right underneath him, who isn't going to go easy on Aiku and is far from it. as he looks completely locked into the game. After that, Aiku once again flexes with his metavision eyes and says that Onazi's shot radius is huge and he very well knows that he's got to brace himself for a possible mid-air shot. He sees Onazi and the ball coming closer to each other and thinks about all the possible positions where Onazi could take the shot from, and Aiku breaks it down to 4 possible shot patterns. He starts to look a bit worried as he says that it means that his odds for stopping him are 1 in 4. But suddenly Onazi looks to his right, where he sees none other than a wild Isagi sprinting with all that he can towards them. He says that he's 1 step ahead and calls Onazi a shining bastard. Aiku seems super surprised by this guest visit by Isagi, but Isagi on the other hand looks super manic as he has puzzle pieces all around him, and also his metavision eyes out as he says that he's going to crush this shot course. Aiku then focuses his attention on Isagi as he looks at him and compliments him, but also calls him a puppy. We then get back to Aiku's brain as he says that Isagi's ramming into Onazi to cut off that course. This means that if he wants to shoot from that position, then he's only got one option. Aiku looks super determined as he goes towards them and thinks that he can crush and stop Onazi now, as he has boiled down that the odds of stopping him are 1 in 1. However, Onazi quickly notices that Aiku is close in, and because of that, he does everything he can to slightly change his body's direction, which makes the ball hit his chest and bounce off it. Aiku, who even had his metavision eyes out, is totally mind-blown, as he can't believe that Onazi twisted his body to then make a reverse chest trap. Isagi also looks at this pretty shocked, and thinks that Onazi's never done anything like that before, and thinks that he threw off his press timing, but still, he thinks that they should be pretty fine, as the goal is behind them after all. However, it isn't going to play out as Isagi wants it to, as Onazi all of a sudden looks to be a karate master, as he legitimately takes some distance before he jumps up and spins around mid-air to then face the ball. Isagi is just looking at him like he has to be kidding. He even says damn, and thinks that Onazi revived the lost shot course. He then takes his metavision eyes out once again and says that he's awakened. Kuso also looks towards Onazi and can't believe his eyes at the sight of this newly awakened beast, as he says that this is a new Onazi, but the one who has to be the most shocked out of all of them has to be Onazi, who we can see is actually unlocking Predator eyes just like that in the heat of the match. Onazi can't believe the feeling that he is feeling and says that inside him, there's still a part of him that can make him this excited. After that, he does this insane shot, and honestly, this panel is just wild, it looks so insanely good. However, just when you thought that Onazi would get a goal and somewhat prove the fraud allegations wrong, it all comes crashing down as we see Aiku, who has a huge smile on his face as he tells Onazi that his talent's blooming, but that he is also blooming. And because of that, we can clearly see that Aiku managed in the last split second to just slightly touch Onazi's shot, which directed the shot away. Onazi also pulls this funny looking face as he can't believe what just happened. Just when he thought that he had awakened and would score, he just gets completely shut down. He looks at the shot and thinks that Aiku deflected it and wonders how that's even possible. So let's get into how that is possible then. As we get into Aiku's brain, who says that Isagi spurred on their enemy's awakening, while at the same time firing up Aiku himself. He explains that to be fully honest, they had no idea what kind of awakening would happen, but he was signaling that he should expect a play that they have never seen before. And it's all thanks to that mindset that his toes were waiting for that instant to react, and he calls it a new type of predictive defense to kill an awakening. And guys, do you hear that? Because that is truly wild, but we'll get more into it later. Anyway, Aiku looks back towards the ball and tells the ball to miss, while Kuso, funnily enough, tells it to go in. However, we then get to the ball, or mainly Gagamaru, who jumps towards it and is going to try and stop it. However, he thinks that this is just too much for him, and it looks like he missed it. But thankfully, the ball hit the crossbar and bounced out, which leaves Kuso looking completely destroyed, which is a bit funny, as I can get behind Kuso slander. However, the Nigeria players that are still in the game and wants to do their all, they all comes rushing towards the ball, like we even see Oboabona being here right in the front line as he is going to the ball, while Kuso, well, he's pretty much just spectating at this point. Anyway, the Nigerian players breaks through Ryu and Nico, and we see Karasu, Raichi and Ryo all looking super worried as the ball is going towards the goal. However, who else would it be that comes in the last minute and saves the goal if it wasn't the shark boy Corona, who right as Bello was going to kick it into the goal. Corona was there to shut him down and stop it from happening, and he looks super cool as he tells them that they are not gonna score. After that, we see the commentators and the crowd being super hyped up as the commentator screams that Ranz Corona has cleared the ball. After that, we get to the bench where we see Ego, who has a super dark shadow around him, which makes him look like the ultimate anime villain. But anyway, He says that this is a perfect victory. We then see Zantetsu and Nanase being super ecstatic over this save, and we also see Shidu, Baru, Hiyori, and Chigiri all sitting patiently on the bench. Anyway, then back to Igo, who says that the 45 days of training that led to this day, the flawless execution of their various tactics, plus Isagi's top suggestion, and now Rin's new pattern, all led to this. Henri just tries to be supportive and nods and agrees with Igo. After that, we see Onazi looking back towards the ball, and not only he but everyone has their eyes glued towards the ball, while Igo continues his little speech and says that this is the U20 World Cup victory they seek, calling it the ideal first victory for the pack of egoists he's created. He then puts his glasses up, once again just like a supervillain, and compliments Blue Lock on their first match. However, meanwhile, our boy Igo here thinks that it's over. The star boy, Isagi, doesn't really agree as the ball lands directly on his leg, and as he looks totally absorbed in the game, he tells Blue Lock that it isn't over yet, and his puzzle pieces are just going completely wild. Anyway, Igo, who sees this, looks super shocked, which might be the first time we have really seen him super shocked, but he must be blown away by Isagi's insane determination, which I feel like he should be used to at this point. But still, after that, the timer shows that 1 extra minute has been added to the time, and we get back to Isagi, who asks Blue Lock if they are all actually satisfied, and he looks so cool. Sorry for glazing Isagi so much, but like, how could I not when he looks like this? We see the only remaining minute on the clock before we see Henri looking super shocked as she looks towards Isagi and says his name before asking what he is doing. We then see Isagi running with all that he can with the ball, and the aura around him is overflowing. His eyes are just as determined as him, as he straight up looks wild. We then see Kuso on the side, who can't even comprehend what is going on as he wonders to himself if he really is trying to score another point now. A no-name from the Nigerian team then screams out that Blue Lock is going for another counterattack. After that, we see Isagi passing the ball to the side and to none other than Rin, who traps it flawlessly. He looks forward and says that he isn't satisfied. Isagi just looks manically towards him and tells him that if that's the case, then he should come on and calls him a beast. After that, we see the two of them being on a straight-up generational run as they are getting behind a ton of no-names without even dropping a single sweat. They are on such a roll that the Nigerian defender screams that the two of them are charging up together again. On top of that, the goalkeeper thinks that he is someone and wants to get a line in before the match ends, so he tells them to move back and to stop them, even if it kills them. However, our boy Isagi has other plans, as he looks wild, and just when one of the Nigerian defenders was going to him, he passed the ball to the side, and to none other than Karasu. Karasu gets a huge smirk on himself and says that Isagi is a real harsh taskmaster. After that, he gets away with a pass back to Isagi and tells him to show him what he can do and calls him Demon King. Isagi looks at the incoming ball and compliments Karasu's pass and calls him extraordinary. And look, I have said this tons of times before, but I love when they refer to each other by their nicknames. Anyway, Isagi then gets the ball and sends it right away to someone else, and this time it's the monster Bachira. Bachira gets the ball, and just like Karasu, he gets a huge smile as he says, "Roger Nosuke," which has me a bit lost, but whatever Bachira says goes. After that, it's actually embarrassing, as he completely outmaneuvers the Nigerian defenders, like he is literally just playing with them. Kuso then screams out with everything that he can. He tells them all to watch out for Isagi, and that he still hasn't scored yet, telling his team that he's going to try and score with the last play. After that, we see Isagi putting in a super wild sprint, but surprisingly, Bachira then thinks that something isn't adding up. He starts dribbling with the ball and says that Kuso's theory is too shallow, and that their egotist can't be summed up that easily. He looks at both Rin and Isagi, who are currently running in front of him, and he thinks that if Isagi just wanted to score, then he would have a better chance if he and Rin kept passing back and forth until he shot and scored himself. We then see a Nigerian player approaching Bachira. However, those no-names are nothing to him, as he goes to the side and thinks that the fact that Isagi went out of his way to pass to Bachira means that right now, Isagi is asking for something else. And after that, we see Isagi who looks back towards Bachira. And with his metavision eyes out, he puts his thumb upside down. This makes Bachira's whole eye start to also go absolutely crazy, as he says that he hears him and calls him partner. And honestly, this duo will go down in history as one of the best, if not the best. With that said, Bachira starts looking totally manic as he sends the pass to him with a backspin on it. After that, we see the goalkeeper, who once again just wants some sort of screen time, and he tells his teammates to watch the goal box. Anyway, back to Bachira's insane pass, which we can see goes right under two of the Nigerian defenders' legs, which I don't know. This just looks like so much aura. However, we then get to Rin, who is accompanied by both Bello and Oboabona, and both of them are strongly holding him down. Bello even tells him that this is the end of the line. But it isn't just them, as we also see Onazi and Kuso, who goes to Isagi and also tell him the same thing. After that, in sync, both Onazi and Kuso think that they will stop Isagi with everything that they can. But suddenly, Isagi says that it goes right as he has planned, and suddenly he turns around, facing away from Onazi and Kuso, and instead towards the incoming ball. He looks so absorbed in the game as he is pushing them back and thinking that this is what he was waiting for, and this new adaptation. We then see Onazi, who can't even believe his eyes as he genuinely looks terrified and says that this move is the reverse trap that he himself made earlier. Kuso then tries to also get himself involved as he tries to close the distance to Isagi and thinks that it isn't the same and that it's not midair, saying that it's a ground pass variant modified for himself. We then see the ball just coming closer and closer to Isagi's foot, and Kuso says that Isagi took the new technique Onazi just invented and instantly remodeled it into his own version. We then see the ball finally coming to Isagi, who traps it upwards while having tons of puzzle pieces around him. After that, he legitimately looks so cool as he takes a deep breath and tells himself not to win by accident, but instead to make victory inevitable. However, you can't get trapped by a formula that you created before. After that, he finally takes the step and jumps up high in the air, and I know that I have said this a bunch of times, but he looks like a demon. Onazi then just looks at him with a sincere and kind of inspiring look, as he says that this is someone on the path to being the world's best. With that said, we get to Isagi, who then finally fires off the shot, and this again is just a flawless panel. Anyway, as he sends away the ball, he says that you need to bet on all of it, your own thinking, your unknown pleasures, and your curiosity in themselves. We then see the Glock behind Isagi, as always, and on top of that, we also see Kuso legit falling towards the ground, probably most likely falling due to Isagi's insane aura. But then the next panel is just as sick as there's legit a full-on bullet around the ball. We then get to Henri, who also looks at this in pure amazement and thinks that this is a reverse rapid side shot volley. After that, we get back to the GOAT Isagi, who thinks that keeping the status quo by sticking to plans is nothing for him, as instead, living on this battlefield means testing himself over and over again. With that said, we see the ball finally hitting the back of the net. After that, Isagi looks manic and calls out for Ego and tells him that his soccer isn't enough for him anymore. And we then get a small panel of Ego below him, and he just looks totally mind-blown by all of this. It literally looks like time has frozen for him. After that, we see Isagi, who of course should go and celebrate this, and he runs before he jumps up into the air and screams out, as he's just made the 4th goal of the match. We also see Raichi, Corona, and of course Bachira around him all coming to celebrate with him. The text then says that the U20 World Cup opening match is over, and that Japan wins,